So we're live.
We are. Okay. Hi, YB. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So thank you for joining us in this topic, Malaysia's race for a COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes.
So maybe let's just start out with you. Maybe you could tell us what is the current situation, in the global sphere, when it comes to the vaccines and how close is the world, in getting a vaccine.
Well, according to the World Health Organization, there are about 193 candidate vaccines being developed around the world. 42 are in clinical trial stages. I think 11 are in phase 3, the last phase of clinical trials. We should be getting safety and efficacy data from phase 3 November, December for some of these candidate vaccines. Once that data is available, then of course the approval process, the regulatory approvals will start. And of course, the FDA has just issued emergency approval guidelines recently, as has WHO. In Malaysia, the approval and regulatory agency is NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Authority. Under the Ministry of Health, they will do the regulatory approvals for the vaccines. And once we have data, once we have approval, then we can start procurement. Actually buying the vaccines and bringing it and transporting it to Malaysia. That's going to be a logistical challenge, obviously, because transporting vaccine, you need cold chain supply, transport, and that's going to be something that we need to prepare from now. So I think the short answer is if the data is good in November, December, and approval comes after that, then we're looking at, of course, next year. And that's what all the news that's coming out seems to converge around next year for the deployment of the vaccine, if it is safe and effective or efficacious.
Okay. On our part, how long do you reckon it will take for the approvals to happen? And also, you mentioned about the cold chain supply, and you're saying that preparation is being done right now. Maybe you can just elaborate briefly on that aspect as well.
Yeah, we've been discussing with certain pharmaceutical companies who will assist in the transport and the delivery of the vaccines across the country. Obviously, we want to ensure that once we've procured the vaccine, we can immunize our citizens everywhere across the country. So there are pharmaceutical companies, local pharmaceutical companies, government-linked companies who have the cold chain facility and that can deliver right up to the hospitals and the point of care across the country. And we're in discussion with these companies right now to ensure that as far as logistics are concerned, that's going to be sorted out and we can deliver the vaccines across the country. On when Malaysia will get it, obviously we're pursuing a multi-pronged approach. As I've announced earlier, we're still talking to COVAX, which is an international facility that's run by Gavi as well as the World Health Organization. We are also speaking bilaterally to pharmaceutical companies directly through the Ministry of Health. And also we're talking to governments like China, where we are trying to finalize a memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding at the G2G level to see if we can secure supply of their vaccines if they're approved later.
Okay. So YB, we did in the end become part of the COVAX allocation plan, but it seemed like I think we only joined the COVAX.
No. We're still negotiating.
Okay.
So on the 5th of August, our permanent representative in Geneva, Dr. Ahmad Faisal, had written a letter to Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization, to express our interest in the COVAX facility.
Okay.
And subsequently, COVAX had a call with the Ministry of Health. There was concerns over the terms of the procurement, and that discussion has been ongoing. I've had 2 calls with COVAX. My ministry has had another subsequent call with COVAX. I'm aware of this sort of deadline tomorrow about
the payment.
COVAX, but I think in my discussion with COVAX, I think the policy of COVAX is not notwithstanding the guideline tomorrow, is not to shut the door on any country. So we are still in the process of negotiation and discussion. We have some concerns. I've been discussing with the Ministry of Finance. I've been discussing with the Attorney General's chambers. I've been discussing with the Ministry of Health, directly with Tan Sri Hisham as well, about joining the COVAX facility, presented to Prime Minister twice. It's something that we're still discussing with COVAX.
Okay, so what are the concerns? You mentioned there were concerns. Is it finance? I mean, cost-wise, or what are we looking at?
Well, obviously that's one. I mean, the upfront payment is quite a big commitment. If you go for, I mean, there are two options to this, which is a compulsory purchase and the optional purchase.
Right.
If you go for optional purchase, just as an illustration, if you go for optional purchase and decide to immunize 10% of your population, just the down payment alone is going to be about 90 million ringgit. That's just the down payment, yeah. And the cost of the vaccine itself, I think there's a if you go for compulsory, there's a ceiling of $20 per vaccine or per person per dose. So you're talking about quite a big commitment here. So obviously, price cost is an issue. We've seen pricing that's come out of pharmaceutical companies that are more competitive, for instance, than the price structure that has been proposed through COVAX. So that's why we are still discussing, because we want to ensure that the agreement is not lopsided. I mean, there are countries that have joined, there are countries who have also not joined. We obviously want to still intend to join because this is also a bulk purchase, global solidarity, but the terms have to be fair to the countries who decide to join. Malaysia is categorized as a middle to high income country, not a low income country under COVAX. So we don't receive any subsidy. We don't receive any assistance through the COVAX facility. We're fully self-paying country. So that's part of Malaysia's challenge as well. So we are looking at COVAX. We're looking at the price bilaterally with the pharmaceutical companies. We've signed non-disclosure agreements with many pharmaceutical companies, and we're seeing the price. We're seeing the data, the clinical trial data that will come through in the next couple of months. And then we can make a more informed decision. But even, let's say we go through COVAX, yeah? COVAX only allows you to take up to 50% of your population, not more than that. Yeah, so even if we did go with COVAX, their limit is only for each country to procure via COVAX up to 50% of their population.
50 of 15, sorry.
50.
Okay.
50%. So that means that, for the remaining 50%, say you want herd immunity at about, 70, 80% or whatever it is, you still have to procure it outside of COVAX. You still have to go directly. You still have to negotiate bilaterally with pharmaceutical companies. So I think it's important that we have multiple lines of negotiations right now. My assurance is that to the Malaysian public is that we are looking at this seriously. We don't want to be left out. Obviously, we want to make sure that once the vaccine is approved and available, that we'll be there and we'll get our initial allocation, at least for the most vulnerable groups that we can deploy the vaccine first. But at the same time, we want to ensure that any agreement is not lopsided, is fair, and the price is reasonable for procurement.
Okay, so maybe just to clarify, when you say lopsided, what is it that you mean? I mean, unfair in terms of just cost-wise, or what are we talking about here? What are we looking at here when you say lopsided? Could you just maybe...
So there are issues with negotiations with the pharmaceutical companies, which is entirely done by the COVAX facility and not the countries themselves. There are issues regarding tax payments. There are issues regarding indemnities. There are issues regarding transportation cost, liability. Unfortunately, we can't reveal in detail what these issues are because COVAX has insisted on confidentiality of the terms. So I can only speak in those general themes that we've been looking at the implications of these concerns very, very closely the last 2 weeks or so.
Okay. So now that we are still in midst of negotiation, is there a concern that it may be too late, let's say, if there is a big breakthrough in the vaccine? I mean, is there any concerns? Are we worried about that?
No. I mean, there are countries who have big fiscal and financial abilities who've put down a lot of money for advanced purchases, and that they're doing that on a risk basis because some of these vaccines that they buy in advance may not even be approved. Malaysia, we have to be careful because our financial abilities are not as broad as some of these other countries, and our Ministry of Health rightly has very high standards when it comes to safety and efficacy of the vaccine. So they also would not like to rush unnecessarily. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. That doesn't mean that we're going to be at the back of the queue. That doesn't mean that everyone else around the world is going to get vaccinated and Malaysia is not going to be vaccinated. We believe that we are still discussing and ensuring that Malaysia will get a safe and effective vaccine.
Okay. So Waibi, you mentioned there are 42 vaccines now at a clinical stage. Maybe from MOSTI's side, could you let us know if are there any of these vaccines that maybe we have had any MOUs with or any agreements with? Are we looking at that? Or maybe you could just...
Yeah, we have a non-disclosure agreement signed with various pharmaceutical companies under the Ministry of Health. As you know, there are different types of vaccines that are being developed. There's the inactivated vaccine, like some of the ones that the Chinese are developing. There's the genetic type of vaccine, the mRNA vaccine that Moderna is developing. There's the viral vector adenovirus vaccine that AstraZeneca is doing with Oxford University. There's a protein vaccine that's being developed by Novavax. So, we're looking at across the board. You can go with the tried and tested inactivated vaccines. You can also, take a risk and try to look at the data coming in from the mRNA vaccine, which has never been developed before. But the most important thing, I think, is to make sure that it's, again, safe and efficacious. The safety and efficacy is very, very important.
Okay. So on our part, again, how long will we take in order for the approvals to be done here once there is a vaccine, before it can be procured? So maybe you can just tell us a little bit on that as well.
Yeah, so this is a subject which we are discussing internally. Obviously, with the WHO, with the FDA giving emergency use authorization for the vaccines.
Correct.
They've come up with certain guidelines. Some of it, like the FDA, is quite strict. Some of it that the WHO has come up with we are reviewing. Also, countries like EU and Australia have come up with their own guidelines as well. We would have our own guidelines, hopefully, in the next couple of months.
Okay, all right. So Waibi, in August, you actually mentioned that you would actually recommend to the cabinet, once there is a vaccine available for procurement, you would want to suggest it, to be given free for Malaysians. So, has this been brought up in the cabinet, is there some reservation? Maybe you can just let us know what's happening there.
At the moment, we don't know how much it's going to cost. Yeah. From what we've seen on pricing, for instance, AstraZeneca has indicated that their price is at $5 per dose, and the range goes all the way up to about $40 per dose. That's the numbers that we're getting from some of the other vaccine, and this is publicly available information. So we don't know where it will land at the end of the day, because certain companies, they price it higher because they give a higher threshold as far as indemnities and liabilities concerned. The ones which are priced lower, perhaps lower threshold of liability and indemnity. These are, we're operating on a ballpark figure here, but it's definitely going to be in the billions. But for me, it's going to be worth spending the money, because this is the biggest public health crisis that we've confronted in our lifetimes, and I think we are duty bound to provide this as a public good to our people in Malaysia. So we'll have to work out the cost. There's something that has to be discussed with obviously the Ministry of Finance. I've told the minister that please set aside a few billion ringgit next year in the budget to procure the vaccine. Obviously, people who want to get who want to buy it privately, go to private hospitals and get vaccinated with approved vaccine, they're free to do that. But we must ensure that whoever wants to be vaccinated by the publicly available free vaccine can do so free of charge.
Okay. So, but also, is there any thoughts of like maybe the government subsidizing some cost and then the public pay? Is that also part of the module, or will it be subsidized by the rakyat?
It depends on the appetite as far as Ministry of Finance is concerned. My recommendation as Science Minister is to treat this as a public good, hence it has to be free. But there's one caveat there, which is that we're not sure how long this vaccine is going to last. Because when I speak to pharmaceutical companies, they also don't know whether the efficacy of this vaccine will last for a year or even up to a year. In that case, perhaps you might need another round of immunization, a booster dose of vaccines, and we have to start planning for that. Maybe the initial doses are free. And we have to start thinking of our financial capacity as far as additional doses are concerned. There is very little data at the moment on how long the efficacy is, the seroconversion rate of the vaccine itself. So we really can't tell at this moment how much we're going to have to be spending on COVID vaccines, not just next year, but over the course of a few years. My feeling is that I feel that at least for the first round of immunization and hopefully for subsequent rounds, it has to be a public good.
Okay, all right. Once the vaccine is procured, like what would the priority be? Like, are we looking at it being given to frontliners only? Because of course this also depends on the amount that is available for us to be purchased. So will it only be like the first priority given to frontliners, high risk group? Like, has there been any discussion with the relevant stakeholders on how can the vaccine be distributed?
Yeah, we will be coming up with a schedule soon, and we will communicate this to the public. Without wanting to preempt the schedule, obviously we will prioritize the most vulnerable groups first. We'll be looking at frontline workers, health workers, social workers. We'll be looking at vulnerable groups in terms of health. So some of the elderly population to be inoculated first. And then we'll go down the list. And then we'll go through teachers, we'll go through emergency services, will be, of course, frontliners. We'll go through the priority list, people who are in contact with many people, for instance, religious officials at places of and things like that. So we'll come up with a clear communication of who will get vaccinated first and the schedule for it and how we coordinate this. This will be done, of course, by MOH, and I think it's important that from now we communicate clearly what the priority groups are and why they've been prioritized and where they can be vaccinated.
Okay, so how soon can we expect this schedule? I know you said in the near future, but is there like a timeline that we are looking at?
Yeah, I hope we can communicate this in the next couple of months or so.
Okay, so realistically speaking, maybe you can just let us know, since you are in the know, what is Malaysia's chance, or to get access to this vaccination? Because I think that's what people want to know, because although we are looking at various approaches, but I think in the end of the day, people want to know how soon can we get the vaccine. So what is your take on that?
I mean, it's difficult for me to give a commitment. This is all subject to so many things which are out of our control: regulatory approvals, and also transportation, logistics. But the assurance that I can give the Malaysian public is that we are pursuing a multi-pronged approach in trying to procure the COVID-19 vaccine, continuing to discuss via COVAX, continuing to talk to governments directly, like the Chinese government. I've just had a 1-hour discussion with the US ambassador about vaccines as well, talking directly with pharmaceutical companies through MOH, signing non-disclosure agreements, even looking at using fill-finish facilities here in Malaysia through some of our pharmaceutical companies, so buying the vaccine in bulk. I've been talking vaccine to vaccine people nonstop for the last month or so. In fact, last night I even dreamt of being injected by the COVID vaccine. I even dreamt of the particular company that was injecting me. I'm not going to say which company it is, but yeah, I was injected there. I mean,
Okay. So yeah, so it's vaccine talk all the way true and true, which is understandable, because that is the debate that's everyone's mind. Okay, so
just a matter of clarity, because this has come up a couple of times, and I just want to address this. It's some people ask, why is he talking about it? Why isn't
the MOH? Yeah.
We have a working group between MOH, MOSTI, as well as Wisma Putra, Foreign Affairs Ministry. I work closely with Adham and Hisham on this, Dr. Sri Hishamuddin, as well as DG, as well as Dr. Tan Sri Jamila as well. We brief PM. It's just I'm coordinating this, and we work closely together. There's no issue of this ministry not doing anything, or what this ministry doing too much, or I think we're just trying to coordinate the response to this.
So you're the spokesperson for this committee, it's fair to say that?
For now, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, YB, what is your advice? Like, lots of people are very concerned, especially with the number of cases. It's just increasing. I think that has caused another round of scare to people here. So everybody is just worried about what's going to happen next. So
Okay.
what do you want to tell the people?
I think the message is not just for today, but it's also for the medium term, because we don't know about the long-term efficacy of the vaccine. Whether or not the effectiveness of the vaccine continues for a long term. Whatever it is, we are going to have to practice public health measures for the foreseeable future. Just because we have the vaccine later, not knowing the seroconversion, not knowing how long it lasts, we will still have to practice the new normal, which is
measures, okay,
distancing, masks, and things like that. I think obviously what's happened in the last 2 weeks is extremely unfortunate. With a spike in the number of cases, we're working hard to bring the cases down and to flatten the curve again, and I think we can do it. Of course, everyone's worried because after being used to low 2-digit cases, suddenly we've got hundreds, and who isn't panicking? But don't. I mean, we have to trust our frontline professionals. We have to trust our security services doing contact tracing, trying to do enhanced MCO that is targeted in certain areas. We feel that the spread is still contained. Sabah, we've put in certain measures as announced by the Security Council. We're quite certain that most of the cases in Kedah, for instance, contained at a detention facility there. So yes, there is reason to be concerned, and I'm not downplaying that at all. And I think we should all be concerned, and we should all heighten our adherence to the SOPs. But at the same time, I don't think that we are at the precipice of a free fall here. I think that we are working hard to bring things under control. But again, tying it into the vaccine message is that even once we get the vaccine, not knowing its long-term efficacy, not knowing its long-term effectiveness, we really do need to live like this for some time until we develop antibodies that don't go away for corona, or unless somehow just corona peters out, like some of the earlier zoonotic diseases.
Yeah. Okay. YB, back to the supply of vaccine and cost wise, what is the ballpark figure that you have that maybe you guys, the government has sort of allocated
$5 all the way up to, I've even heard $60 US per dose. So you're talking about a range from 5 to 60. So that's why when people ask me, can you be more clear about the price? Can you be more clear about even within COVAX, the price differential is huge. And if you do in COVAX, for instance, it's not us that's negotiating with the pharma companies. It's on COVAX on your behalf. So there are pros and cons to joining COVAX. I'm not saying that we're not going to. We're still talking to them, and hopefully we can have some clarity in the next couple of weeks or so. But I'm just saying that even notwithstanding not having clinical data, the price range is so huge right now that we're not sure. I'm confident though that as we progress, as production is ramped up, over time the cost will come down, obviously. So initially the cost can be as high as maybe US $20 per dose, but eventually it'll come down to the marginal price once people start producing in scale.
Okay, and so maybe once there is something a vaccine to be procured, and this is aside from the one from COVAX, because we are discussing with other companies and whatnot. What is our percentage of the population that we hope to immunize? Let's say the first round when it comes about. What are we looking at? What's the percentage? Are we looking at 20%? Are we looking at 50%? What are we looking at in getting the vaccines from the first round, for example?
Even if you look at COVAX, yeah. Even if any country joins COVAX, first round, they're going to give only 3% of country's population. And then, so it doesn't matter whether you order 10 or 50% of your population. The first round, for instance, COVAX say they will at least give up to 3% of your population, so that, that will address your frontliners, that will address your most vulnerable groups and things like that. So, again, managing public expectations. Don't expect that once the vaccine is approved, once Malaysia buys it, then we're going to get 30 million doses, on day one. It's going to come in stages. It's not just the production facility that's availability, but it's also logistics. You imagine transporting 30 million doses. The sort of transport, logistic preparation that you need, we don't have that. So it's going to come over a period of time. And that's something that we're going to have to explain once we explain the scheduling. Again, herd immunity, it depends on how we react to the vaccine. It depends on the seroconversion. It depends on how long the effectiveness is. People are saying ballpark figure of 70 to 80% before you get herd immunity. Yep, we can operate on that for now, but again, it's very early days to try and come up with a number before we get herd immunity. Because once you get herd immunity, then what if the vaccine, the antibody count starts dropping? And there's no effectiveness after a while, then you're back to square one. So we really don't know enough right now. Hopefully we'll get more clarity on this as the data comes out.
Okay. So YB, anything else that you would like to add?
I've got one quite important thing to raise, which is disinformation. Malaysia, just like any other country in the world, we also have people with alternative theories. We have a pretty robust anti-vaccine here in Malaysia. And this is why communication, public health, risk communication around the vaccine is going to be very, very important. I've been discussing this with Tan Sri Jamila about how we're going to craft the communication strategy for this. Because we don't want a situation where the anti-vax are going to come out and say, and point to certain examples which are not apple-to-apple comparisons. They're going to say, oh, look at what happened in Philippines when they came up with the dengue vaccine, which ended up resulting in deaths of infants in Philippines. So we're going to have to ensure that we communicate the safety data, the efficacy data of these vaccines clearly to the public. What is being shared right now in terms of data, what's being peer-reviewed, not many people can understand that. I don't understand that, but we have to distill that and communicate that so that people are confident when we do this mass immunization that they will participate. Well, we want to make it compulsory because obviously for us to defeat COVID, apart from the long-term effectiveness of the vaccine, is that everyone is immunized and we get to herd immunity. So I think it's going to be very important that we instill confidence in the people from the data that we get our scientists to get out there, talk to the people and say that, look, once we approve this, and Malaysia, NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Authority, and MOH, has great professionals there, very stringent regulatory approval process, perhaps the gold standard in the world. So if they say it's good for us, and I think that has to be communicated. So all this doomsday stories that I'm sure the anti-vax will come up with can be defeated, because we need the public to be able to trust in the vaccine that we procure, and for them to get immunized and take the vaccine.
Okay, so you will be coming up with that messaging pretty soon, so that to make everybody to understand what's going on.
Assuming that the phase 3 clinical data comes in November, December, which some of the companies like AstraZeneca, like Sinovac have said that they will come up with the data by November, December. Regulatory process, maybe another couple of months after that, and the production and delivery, by Q2 or Q3 next year, middle of next year. So that communication process has to start now. So we're in the process of discussing that, and hopefully by the end of the year, or now it's October, November, December, we can start with our communications plan and strategy about the safety of the vaccine, the necessity of the vaccine, who's going to be immunized first, how you're going to get immunized, the schedule, where you're going to get it done. And also to work on stuff that we've been talking about other forms of technology, for instance, deployment of blockchain for the vaccination process. So we know exactly the dose that you took, where it came from, which batch, which manufacturer, because it's quite likely that we will have different vaccines. We're probably not going to procure from just one pharmaceutical company. In terms of the supply capacity, we might procure from multiple pharmaceutical companies. So at least Hema, through blockchain, I know that you got, for instance, the vaccine from Moderna, from which batch, which date. So we can use blockchain for that. We can use electronic health certificates. And we're discussing about how to ensure that once you're vaccinated, you get an electronic health certificate. Maybe we put it on your MySejahtera application, so you can go around and show that, this is my e-health certificate. I've been vaccinated on this date using this vaccine, and this is my e-health certificate. And hopefully, we can also work with foreign governments to create early travel bubbles by mutually recognizing these electronic health certificates. Okay, this guy has been vaccinated through a vaccine that my country's regulatory authority has approved, so he can travel to our country. So those are other parts of technology that we're looking at in terms of deploying this vaccine.
Okay, all right. Okay, so thank you, YB, for your time and letting us know what the update is. We hope that there will be something that comes up soon, and so all of us will be, I guess, breathing a sigh of relief, because everybody is everybody is not really used to the new normal, although it is supposed to be the new normal, I guess. So yeah.
Take care. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and any updates, I'll let you guys know.
Thank you. Thanks, YB. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.